welcome everyone to Today in the Scene by Indie Arcade Wave. I'm Joe, your host, and here on In the Scene, we dive into what's happening in the arcade space, from new arcade developers, arcade owners, and operators, and just news in the space in general. Now, I helped bring Galactic Battleground to the arcade space about 5 years ago. We've been showing it off at shows all over the country. We recently did a trip down to Texas, which I'll be filming a video about that to let people know how that went. Yeah, it was an awesome time, and I'm excited for this week's guest. He's actually we visited his arcade in Oklahoma City, and it was a really sweet spot. So I'm gonna bring Jose in here, and he'll tell you a little bit more about Retro Pub Arcade or Flashback Retro Pub Arcade. How you doing?
Good. How's it going, Joe?
It's going great. Excited to get you on here and chat about the arcade. We stopped at a Dallas location, which was previously one of your locations, and then you
Yes,
sold it
sir.
to Kendall,
Yep.
which turned into round two. I didn't know that they were originally linked until I was actually there, and I was like, "Oh, that's the same DJ booth. Like,
Yeah.
that's got to be coming from Jose." So let's just have you introduce yourself. Let people know who you are.
All right. My name is Jose Rodriguez. I am the owner of FlashBack RetroPub Oklahoma City and formerly Dallas, which is now round two. And yeah, we've been in the business now in Oklahoma City. This is our ninth year. It's just been amazing. I can't believe that we are approaching the 10-year mark. I never imagined we'd be this far along. I guess I didn't really know what to expect, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been great just to see it continue to grow every single year, and the crowds that have come in. And man, it's been a dream.
Yeah, I love to hear that. Like I said, the arcade was sweet. I really enjoyed hanging out there.
Thank you.
How did you get into the arcade space? Like, what are some of the earliest memories you have of playing arcade games that like really put you on this trajectory?
It's funny you should ask. So, my first real interactions with arcades goes all the way back to when I was around 6, 7 years old. So, um, my parents moved to Oklahoma when I was around 6 years old. We moved there from Puerto Rico, and when we moved to Oklahoma, we didn't have a lot of means, and we didn't have a washer and dryer. So, back in the day, laundromats were like really big. A lot of people didn't have washer and dryers. Uh, Back in the 80s. It was kind of a luxury thing to have. So we went to a laundromat, and the laundromat we went to had three games that specifically remember. They had Donkey Kong, they had Galaga, and they had Pole Position. And I could never understand pole position. It was so hard, especially as a 6 year old, to like keep control of the car. So I never really played that. Galaga at the time was just kind of very confusing to me. I didn't understand the purpose of it. But Donkey Kong I got, and it was also one of the games that my dad liked. So I'd get literally 4 quarters every time we went to the arcade, and I had to use those quarters to entertain myself for the entire time that my parents would be there doing laundry. Um, so yeah, so I started playing and really enjoyed it. And then once in a while, my dad would. There was a movie theater. Yeah, I grew up in a town called Lawton, Oklahoma, which is southwest Oklahoma, big military town, and they had a movie theater that had a lot of games. So once in a while, as a luxury, we'd get to go to the movie theater, not to watch a movie, but to go to the big arcade that they had. And we'd get to play some of the games that they had there. So yeah, man, those are some of my early memories, and they stuck with me for a long time. And eventually ended up opening up my own arcade place.
Yeah, I love that. I was just like all the stories from the 80s and 90s of like arcade games were just everywhere. Even for me,
Yeah.
I'm a little young for that era, but like even when I was in like middle school and stuff, there was still a cool arcade at the mall, like at the
Hmm.
movie theater and stuff. And in the last, I feel like 10 to 15 years, that like really fell apart, and now it's just like a bunch of claw machines and like broken
Yeah.
games, and
Yeah.
they're not being maintained anymore, which is really sad
Dance Dance
because
Revolution.
I love DDR, but yeah, it's like at the mall, like
I
I don't
remember
know.
seeing that for the first time, and I'm like, "What in the world? Like, what is this? Like, it's an interactive game." I remember when there was arcade games at 7-Eleven.
Hmm.
Like, that's. I remember you'd go in, you'd get a Slurpee, and go over, and they usually had one or two games, at
Yep.
least the 7-Elevens over in the town that I lived in. Yeah, they had arcade games. So yeah, it's I mean they were everywhere, and it was just it was fun. It's just you don't see that anymore, and it kind of makes me sad. I don't really
Right.
go into the arcades in the mall because it's like literally like all brand new games, and
Yeah. You
yeah,
just know you're
yes.
gonna be disappointed. I mean,
Yeah, I honestly, I'm trying to think back to where I went into the arcade for the first time in the mall and everything had changed. I mean, it had to have been late 90s, early 2000s when I went in and I was like, what are all these games? Like all this stuff that I do not recognize. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like 2010-ish, it like really shifted away from all the old stuff, or it
Hmm.
was just in there broken. I mean, what's the point of keeping
Yeah.
a game in there broken? Like, um, yeah, it's just completely different landscape now. Now you have to go find an arcade bar or a dedicated arcade to play these older games, which I'm okay with. You know, at
Yeah.
least you know you what you're getting when you walk in. So let's talk about opening Flashback RetroPub. Like,
Yep.
it's been 9 years. Obviously, you've gone through a whole bunch of stuff in that time. Um, when did you come up with the idea? You were like, I want to open an arcade bar in Oklahoma City. And how did you turn it from an idea into actually being a physical location?
So I actually, trying to think back the first time I went to an arcade bar. I want to say it was 2009, 2010. I visited some friends up in Tulsa I went up to Tulsa for a friend's birthday party. And he was like, "Hey man, let's go check out this arcade." And I was like, "Arcade?" He's like, "Yeah, it's like an arcade bar." And I was like, "What?" And there was a place called up there called the Max, and we went there, and I was just blown away. I was like, "Holy cow! This is like being back at the old school arcades because they had all the games." And right away, after visiting there one time, I was like, "This is really cool. Like, this is different. This is unique. I've never seen anything like it." So, I'm very much into doing my research about things. So right away, I started just looking up arcade bars and seeing what, because it was a new concept to me. So I started looking across the country to see what other arcade bars I could find, and from there, I started finding places like Ground Control in Portland, um, Barcade that had started off in New York, um, and it just the idea just kept festering, just growing and growing, and I'd always basically wanted to own my own business at some point. I just never really knew exactly what I wanted to do, but that was it. After seeing that, I was like, oh, I got to find a way to like make this happen. And at the time, I was just working a 9 to 5 and really didn't have a lot of money saved up. So, first idea was to see if I could find any business partners. So, of course, I go to my friends that took me there and I was like, hey guys, let's open one up. Let's open up our own in Oklahoma City. And they were kind of along for the ride for a little bit, and eventually once it kind of came to the point where we're like, all right, we got to put some money up to like really start doing this, they're like, yeah, it was a good idea, we're good though, like this is where we stop. And I was like, all right. So I went back to a person that I had met several years back when I worked in the NBA. That was one of my season ticket holders, and I went to him and I was like, "Hey," I said, he owned his own business, and so I figured I've never opened up my own business. Let me talk to someone who has, and someone who has their own business, and see, what it takes and what I have to do. And we had some really long conversations and some very real conversations about what it takes. But I wasn't discouraged, and I was like, you know what, I really want it, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make it happen, regardless of how long it takes. So I went to work literally like I was like, well, let me get some other part-time jobs to try to save up some money to see, how this goes, and how long it takes me to really get this going. So it took me about 5 years from the time that I really started getting after it. I worked numerous part-time jobs, bartending, which I had done in college. Um, I mean, I did any job I could find that was legal. I did, and it took me about 5 years to save up enough money to really get to a point where we could open up a place. I started basically, I would travel on the weekends. At the time, I was basically, I was like, well, let me start buying arcade games. So I started buying arcade games. I'd get on Craigslist and I'd look around to see if there's any for sale, where they're available, and I'd kind of plan my weekends out for with my part-time jobs based off where I had to drive to go pick up arcade games. So like I'd go bartend a Friday, Saturday night, and then I'd use that money, and then Sunday I'd get on the road early in the morning after having slept for like 3 or 4 hours, and I'd get on the road and I'd be on the road till late Sunday night, driving out to Dallas or East Texas or Kansas or Missouri or Arkansas, just picking up games, and then get home late Sunday night and go to sleep to go to work all over again for the entire week. And that was my routine off and on basically for about 5 years until we got to a point where I had about 30 games I had purchased. By that time, we had eventually found a location where we're at now, and that took a long time too. Finding a location is probably one of the most important parts when opening up a business. You want to make sure that it's a place that, um, first of all, is within your budget. Excuse me. Second of all, you want to make sure that it's a place that you do your research on, that you really get a good feel for the area and the potential growth for the area. You never want to be in a place, you're priced out if you go to a place that's already developed. But if you go to a place that's has a potential to be developed and really take off, and you kind of, you know, you get to know what's going on and the plans for that area and who's in charge, who are the big players that are making it move, and what their reputation is for developing areas. If you do that homework, then you can set yourself up in a good position, and that's kind of what we did with this area. We had a couple places that we looked at that just, for one reason or another, either they didn't believe in the concept that we had. I mean, I flat out had owners, they're like, that'll never work. Um, and they weren't familiar with the concept. So to them, they were just like, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time bringing someone in that's not going to survive very long. Because it is a lot of work on both sides. And I mean, we'd kind of gotten to a point where I didn't think it was going to happen. Like I was like, we can't find a spot. No one, the people we've come across really just don't believe in what we're doing. They don't think it'll work. And then we had one that we thought was going to work, and then the person just kind of, drag their feet on getting the location really going. So we sat on this location for about a year before we basically had to pull the plug on that area. And then I just, we gained a little bit of a social media following at the time. And I just asked, I'm like, hey, anyone out there that's in real estate that knows of a place, let us know. And where would you guys like to see us open up this place once we do? And right away, I had someone reach out to me that was a real estate agent, and she was like, "Hey, I have a location that I think would work really well for what you guys are doing, and it's an area that's really about to take off." And I was like, "Oh, where's it at?" And she private messaged me, and she's like, "I know the owner. I think that he'd really like this concept." And because I was like, "Are you sure? Like, are they up for a bar?" And she's like, "Yeah, they'd. I think they'd really like this concept." And I was like, "Great, I'd love to take a look at the place." And at the time, the space was that we're in right now was being used as a kind of like a warehouse for a law firm. So they were storing like all their files and all sorts of stuff in there. And I just asked her, I was like, "Can I just go take a look at the place?" And I stepped in, I took one look, and I was like, "This is it. Like, this is the spot." Like, I just love the layout of it, the older building, which is what we'd been looking for. But I knew there was a lot of work to do. I mean, part of the floor was still dirt. if it tells you how much work we really had to do in that place. So yeah, we met with the owner. We told him what the concept was. He thought it was really cool. He thought it was different, but that was out of the box for him, which he liked. And that was kind of, his thing was like, man, all my businesses that I've ever done have been kind of out of the box. So I'm game. And we signed a lease and got going, and finally opened up October of 2015.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great story. That's interesting that you walked into the building, it still had a dirt floor, and you were like, "I'm in. I like this." um,
Yeah,
and
you have to
from
be
your
able to see
mention,
through all that stuff, through all
right?
that stuff.
And from your mention of location, like that was one of the first things I thought when we drove up. We were driving, and there wasn't really too much going on. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd never been to Oklahoma, so I didn't expect too much. We drove past like the basketball arena and everything, and then
Mhm.
we got to your area, and I saw like 4 or 5 apartment complexes across the street, and then there was a bar like behind you and a restaurant next to you, and there
Yeah,
were just people everywhere. I was like, this is a
yeah,
really good spot for an arcade.
yeah, and
So
none of that was there
location
when
paid
we
off.
opened up.
So
None of
it
it.
it worked out really well, I guess.
Yeah,
I mean,
when
your
we
research worked out really well.
yeah, I mean, a little luck always plays into it. At the time at the time, whenever I first really got the idea and I started looking, I was working at the Oklahoman, which is the newspaper, the big newspaper for the state, back when it was like owned by people from Oklahoma. Now it's owned by a conglomerate of newspapers. So it's not really local anymore. Um, but at the time, that area was actually my territory for advertising. So I did marketing and advertising. So um, I knew a lot of the businesses in the area, and I was actually in charge. Like my territory also included like the Bricktown area, which is like at the time was where all the bars were. So I knew a lot of the bar owners, and I really just kind of had a good feel for what was going on in the downtown area. Now, again, it still takes luck because how many times have you heard of developments that are going to happen in different places, and all of a sudden they never
Yeah,
really
they just
pan
don't
out.
happen.
Yeah, so it happens all the time. So that's why I'm saying like the luck plays a lot into it. So when we opened up, we knew that the hotel that's across the street that used to be an old Ford factory. There was talks that they were looking to turn it into a hotel. So we're like, okay, that could potentially happen. The apartments across the street had no idea that that was going to happen. And then there's a concert venue that's kind of diagonal from us called Jones Assembly. And at the time, that wasn't even that was they were kind of like, oh, they may do a restaurant, they may do this, they may do that. Again, still not sure, but there was a potential there, and there was enough there that I felt good about. And again, it's regardless, it's still a risk. 90% of bars fail within the first year. So it doesn't matter. You could pick the best location, best concept, and if it just doesn't click with people, then I mean, it's not going to be successful. So
Right.
when we opened up, um, we're the first bar in the district, and we're the only business that stayed open past 8 p.m. And, we were kind of in an area of downtown where we have a lot of transient population. So a lot of people tend to want to stay away from that, especially back when we first opened up 9 years ago, where really it was a bar and then there was like nothing. And there's a couple shelters that were within our area. So, it was like, man, how does this work? Like, is this going to be a deterrent for people? Is it not? But we felt good enough about the location, and we had enough faith that everything was going in the right direction, that the area was being revitalized. That most of it had already, up until um, the light stop that's right next to our space. Like, all the buildings up to that point had all been completely renovated, and there's basically day businesses there. It was like you cross over, and now that's when the night district kind of starts for our district, where now you have restaurants and bars and concert venues and hotels and all that stuff. So it's really interesting how that district shifts from like one street to the other. It goes from day businesses to night. But now, even on the other side that used to be day businesses, now there's more restaurants over there. There's bars over there. So yeah, it's really just it's really been neat to see the area really develop over the last 10 years, and just knowing that we're a big part of it really taking that next step forward with kind of the nightlife aspect of it.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. You're talking about research, about
Mhm,
being dedicated. Obviously, you spent 5 years collecting everything to get this open. You had locations that didn't end up working out.
mhm.
Um, let's talk about the Dallas location. So,
Okay.
um, the best teacher sometimes is failure.
Hmm.
No matter what you do, no matter how you plan. I mean, there's a saying, God, man plans and God laughs. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that aspect of it. You had everything figured out. You opened up a location in Dallas. I know you had some people in place. Some things didn't work out, and then you
Yep.
ended up selling it to Kendall. So
Yep.
kind of walk us through that process of how you decided you wanted to open, because you were basically operating it remotely. You weren't in Dallas at the time. So
Correct.
how did that all go? Like, you found a location and everything. Like, kind of walk us through that process.
Yeah. So, I mean, from day one when I opened up Oklahoma City, I was like, all right, where we opening up another one? Like, I'm always just wanting to just kind of keep going, push myself. And I'm stubborn in that way. We've looked at different cities in the past, and everything just kind of kept calling to the Dallas Fort Worth area for me. I felt like that would be like a big challenge, and I wanted to take that challenge and um, kind of prove it to myself that I could do something out just outside of Oklahoma. And we actually were looking at Fort Worth for a long time. And same thing. It's just, if you've done this before, as far as opening up a place and opening up a business, you understand that, like, the struggles of just finding a place. It's really hard. If you've never opened one up or have never opened up your own business and you're in the process of it, it's the most discouraging part, is just trying to find a location, because you may find a location, you're like, yeah, I love it, this is it, and it doesn't work out, and it's so discouraging. And you feel like you're just taking hits all the time, just getting through the process to open up a business. So we had looked at Fort Worth, and I mean, we spent a lot of time and a lot of money just kind of focus in Fort Worth. And um, we had found a place. We're in the process of signing the lease to this place, and then everything is, like you said, everything you kind of learn from. I don't necessarily consider things failure. I just consider them learning lessons. And we were about to sign a lease on a place. We had agreed on everything, and then at the last minute, the owner decided to change the rate on us. So we had agreed on a certain price per square foot. We get the contract, and all of a sudden, that price per square foot jumped like $5. And I was like, "Oh, this is a typo." Like, "Hey, you sent us the wrong price." And then they're like, "No, that's the price." And we're like, "What? That's not what we agreed on." And they're like, "Yeah, well, we decided that this is worth more than what we agreed. So that's the price." And so, you got to stick to your guns at times, even if it means losing out on something that you really wanted, because you have to understand your business. Having paid at that time $5 more per square foot than what we had agreed wouldn't have worked for our model, and we wouldn't have been successful. And you can't start off a business already behind. You can't start off already in a position where you feel like, man, I'm already losing from the get go. So we held strong, and we're like, no, we're not signing a lease. Like, that's not what we agreed to, and we're not doing it. So we basically stuck to our guns for about 3 months. And then they came back and they're like, hey, we apologize. We want to honor what we first offered you guys. So we'll go ahead and go back to the price we agreed to, and we'll move from there. And at that time, I was just like, no, if it was a red flag, because if this is how you do business, then I don't want to put myself in a position where all of a sudden you don't get that $5 that you wanted to right now, and you're going to hold it against me later on down the road. And all of a sudden, when I go to sign my second lease or third lease or whatever, now you're hiking it $10 more or something.
And you're already in the space, so you're kind of
Yeah,
stuck.
so you're
Like,
kind of stuck. Yeah, you're stuck, and there's not much you can do because to start all over and find a new location, it's just a pain. I mean, you're better off just basically closing shop and moving on. So, um, we went through, I want to say, about three different locations in Fort Worth, and it was like it was a little bit different by that time. We had Oklahoma City had been open for, I want to say, about 3 years. So we had proof that our concept worked, and it was just the people were different that we were dealing with. So they believed in our concept, and they'd seen that, okay, you got one going on, you understand how this works, and it's successful and it's really cool. They really liked the concept, they liked the idea. So it was a different approach from the standpoint that people actually believed in us and wanted us in their business. It was just a matter of finding a place that worked for us. And I was very particular about the place. I wanted it to have a specific feel from the outside to the inside. I'm very much, into. I don't like new buildings necessarily. I like renovated buildings. I like the old school brick buildings that just, it just has a different feel to it. And the idea of just an arcade bar and an old warehouse type feel place to me just really plays well, and it just makes it fun. It reminds me of I don't know if you remember the original Ninja Turtle movie where they go to the Foot Clan hangout spot, and it's like this old warehouse where they have all sorts of arcade games and they have
yup,
ramps for skating. Like
yup.
that feel, it's like that to me as a kid always stood out. I'm like, oh my god, that's like the coolest spot.
Who
So that
wouldn't want to hang out there?
Oh yeah, I know. And it's like that to me was has always kind of stood out as a cool spot for an arcade. So anytime I've ever looked for a place, I'm like, I want like the old like warehouse feel to it. Like you walk in, you feel like it's back in like the Ninja Turtle movies. So I think we ended up spending about 3 years in Fort Worth before we finally felt like we'd kind of exhausted all options. And it was kind of one of those like, all right, well, either we kind of put a stop to this expansion idea, or maybe we open up to the Dallas area. And at the time, I was kind of very hesitant about Dallas. Dallas is different. Dallas doesn't feel like Texas at all. Dallas feels more like LA than anything else, and or that they strive to be more like LA than any other place in Texas. And I was like, well, I'm gonna do my due diligence since I've been looking down here for a long time. I'm gonna see what I can find in Dallas. And I started looking up some of the different districts, and we found this district called Bishop Arts. And right away, I was like, oh, well, this is different. This doesn't feel like Dallas. This doesn't look like Dallas. This feels more like Oklahoma City. This feels more like a Fort Worth type district neighborhood where it's a lot of local businesses. It's not all corporate. It's not franchise. It's not just big money building big things. This feels local. This feels different.
Everything's like
So,
1, 2 levels. It's not 6, 7 level
yeah,
buildings. Yeah,
exactly.
that's
Yeah. And
exactly what I thought too. Yeah.
yeah, the whole area, that Oak Cliff area, feels different than the rest of Dallas. It feels more grounded. I think it's probably the best word to use. It's very grounded. And again, it was an area, once I started doing my research, it was an area that's being revitalized also. Oak Cliff didn't have the best reputation, um, for the longest time. It was a part of town that kind of been forgotten for a while, but very historic part. Lots of history behind the area, and those are the things that really intrigue me when I look at places. I want to know the history of the neighborhood. I want to just kind of see where they're at, the development, and really what makes that area unique. Um, and I started doing my research and finally got boots on the ground to really scout out for myself. I went down there and just kind of spent a night and drove around and just kind of went to different businesses during the day and at night, and really just kind of did my homework. And it just felt different. So we scheduled my real estate agent that was based out of Fort Worth. Um, she went ahead and she stayed on board with us, and then she's like, I can handle Dallas too. Like I do stuff in Dallas all the time. So she knew what we were looking for, and we just didn't want to start over with someone that we had to kind of explain everything. You know, she'd bought on, she was sold on our concept. She'd been with us from the very beginning, so we're like, we're gonna stick with you. And she's like, I'm down. Like, let's find a place in Dallas. So we had scheduled. I remember we scheduled a couple visits, a couple different places, and they were all districts that I just was totally against. Like I'm like, nope, 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 nope. I don't want to go in Deep Ellum. I don't want to go on. Oh gosh, Greenville. Like there was just a lot of districts, and I'm like, man, I went to some of these districts and some of these places in college, and it's just all party, like just crazy party zone. People drinking nonstop all the time. Which I mean, we want people to come and drink, but we don't want the rowdiness, the craziness. We want people to come in and have fun and it be a relaxed atmosphere, and not feel like like we're not a club. We're a fun neighborhood hangout bar with a lot of nostalgia, and we just there are certain crowds that we wanted to stay away from. So I went to Dallas the night before we were supposed to visit, and I saw that building that we were at, that we opened up at. I saw it, and I was like, "Man, that looks really similar to Oklahoma City. The feel of it, the businesses next to it." Yeah, but it wasn't on our list of places to look at. So I had messaged her. I had messaged our real estate agent, and I was like, "Hey," I said, "I found this spot in Bishop Arts, and there's a sign that says it's available. Can we look at it?" So she's like, "Oh, let me double check and see." So she messaged me back. She goes, "Actually, one of the guys that we're meeting with tomorrow to look at a different place, he is the one who's listing this place. So we'll bring it up to him tomorrow and see if we can take a look at it." And that's what we did. I was like, man, I don't want to look at any other spot. Like, I know what I like and I know what I want, and that's the spot. But hey, I understand you got to play the game. We got to go look at all these other places that he wants to show us before we bring this one up. And that's what we did. We just kind of toughed it through like two or three different buildings that he wanted to show us. And I was like, the whole time I was like, yep, yep, nope, okay, nope, we're good, moving on. I just wanted to get to the end of it to be like, okay, so what about this location? And we finally got to that location, Bishop Arts, and we brought it up, and he was like, "Yeah, it's available. You guys want to go take a look at it?" And we're like, "Yeah, let's go take a look at it just to compare." And it was the same thing. As soon as I walked in, I was like, "This is it. This is the spot." And I kind of saw what we could do with it. I mean, we did a lot of work to the building on the inside to make it look how it looks now. Um, and yeah, it just sometimes once it's meant to be, it kind of opens up for you. So that all started, and oh my gosh, that was 2019 when we went to the location. It was August of 2019. So we met with the owner. We kind of agreed on everything, and we all wanted this to work. And then COVID happened because we were supposed to open up 2020, and COVID happens, and all of a sudden it's like I had already started moving arcade games in there. We were kind of already starting to prep to do some stuff. Um, COVID happens and just basically just throws a wrench into everything. And we were in the process of trying to get permits and everything from the city when everything got shut down. I remember we were actually supposed to go before the city council March of 2020, and then it's everything happened with COVID, and then they pushed that back to like May. They're like, "Oh, we're going to delay it till May." I was like, "All right, fine, 2 months, not a big deal. We can fight through it. We don't know what's going on with everything right now, and how businesses are going to continue to react, and what's going to happen, and what's going to be closed, what's not." Then as we approach May, they push it back to like August. And as we get closer to August, they push it back to like November or December. Finally, like in 2021, is when we finally got before the city council. I think it was like January 2021 or something like that. January, February. Um, so we finally got approval on the permits that we were trying to get, or I'm sorry, on the rezoning. We had to rezone the building. And then after that, then we had to start working on permits and stuff and pulling stuff. But yeah, it was a little stressful. We fought through it, and we already had the money set aside for everything. So that was the thing that, I'm kind of stubborn. I'm like, look, the money's already set aside. We get past this whole COVID restrictions and everything, then I think we have a chance to really. I mean, everyone's kind of starting over essentially. There's not really so much of a you're established, I'm established. It's just kind of like who's going to survive uh, once everything gets started and after COVID. And so we pushed ahead, and um, you know, we got opened up in 2022, January 2022. We opened up, and you know, anytime you have business partners, things come up, disagreements come up. At the time, I had only had one business partner in Oklahoma City. I took on two different business partners in Dallas, um, and uh, two completely different people than my first business partner. And by the time we had opened up Dallas, I had already essentially become the main owner, the only owner for Oklahoma City. So I was kind of already running things by myself. I didn't have a business partner anymore in Oklahoma City. I just had two business partners for Dallas. And life happens, things happen as far as just management. And I was at the time, um, I was already, looking ahead to try to focus on opening up a third location. And I had to kind of step back away from that and focus more on just running the Dallas location and getting that going. And eventually it just kind of got to the point, I have two kids and one's really active in sports, and he takes priority, and I had to kind of choose, do I want to be part of his life and watch all his events and be there for him, or do I want to run a bar? And opening up a bar and running a bar is a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time. And I was at the point where I would much rather just kind of spend that time with my son and be a part of his life and be there for all his stuff than be stuck at the bar, um, running it continuously. And I made the hard decision to go ahead and sell it, um, which it was really hard, especially as hard as we worked to open that place up and everything we went through. It was very much a labor of love, and I had uh, Dallas was a lot different than Oklahoma City from the standpoint that, um, when we opened up Dallas, we knew that we had to hit the ground running. We knew what we had to present. We knew that there was a lot of competition, so we had to make sure we were clicking on all cylinders by the time it opened up. So I'm talking about just aesthetics of it, the look of it, everything that we had. Oklahoma City, when we opened up, we didn't know what we are doing. So we just kind of every year we kept improving, we kept growing. The way that Oklahoma City looks now looks nothing like it did whenever we first opened up. I mean, we have close to 100 games now in Oklahoma City. When we opened up, we only had like 30 something games, and we expanded in Oklahoma City to the space next to us. Originally it was just like that first space where you enter that long building. So Oklahoma City experienced a lot of growth, and I wanted Dallas to open up looking as close to where Oklahoma City was at that current time, not when it first opened up, because I was like, yeah, it has to be different here. And we did. I was very proud of what we did in Dallas, the look of it. We had really great clients, really great business. It was booming. I just didn't have the time to invest in it anymore, and had to basically pull the plug on my end. As far as I believed in the space, and I know that Kendall definitely believes in the space, and Kendall lives in that neighborhood, so he has a really good feel for everything in the neighborhood, and I didn't want to just sell it to someone who's going to run it into the ground, because I had several different offers. But Kendall was the one who, to me, I felt was going to keep it in its truest form of what it was, and really run it right because he was invested. He lives in that area and he wanted, he understands how everything works there and he wanted to really be a part of the neighborhood, which is what we've always wanted to do in our businesses is really be a part of the neighborhood. We're not trying to change the neighborhood. We want to continue to help it grow and be a part of it and be a place that people in the area are proud of and they can say, "Hey man, this is our bar." And and that's a thing in that area. Dallas is very much a where you live is kind of where you eat and play, and people are very proud of what they have in their area in the neighborhoods. There's a lot of pride in the neighborhoods in the Dallas area, which is really neat when you get down to the bottom of it, because you wouldn't expect it. But um, again, we wanted someone that was going to stay true to form on it and really be invested in it, not just look at it as, oh, I own another bar. And Kendall was the guy. So I'm really happy for him. I've seen some pictures lately. Yes, he's doing really great. He's changed a lot of things up that we never thought about doing. So yeah, I mean, he's made it his, and it's really cool to see how it's continued to grow. So it always have a spot in my heart. So
Yeah, I think Kendall was a great choice, honestly. Like he's already got a business in the area. It's been
yeah,
doing well for a while. He's a really cool guy. Like you were saying, like the community needs to be able to say, like, this is my bar. Like,
yeah,
shout out to Jonathan and Damien, like two regulars that we met at the bar. Awesome
yeah,
guys. They're there all the time. You could feel that energy. Like it really was like this is the local hangout. We come here all the time because like we
yeah,
like the atmosphere. And I think it worked out really well. Obviously lessons to be learned, trials and tribulations across the,
yeah,
the path of it. But that's just gonna help you next time you decide to expand. It's just gonna make it that much easier. You know what to look for. I mean, clearly you already know about location and who to work
yeah.
with and things like that. So you got it there. And I love that Kendall and I talked to. He asked me like, "What do you think about doing this or doing that?" Because he's still new to the arcade space. So
Yeah,
it's great to have that connection and like have someone who is actively reaching out for advice from people that have been around it. Or
yeah. And he
I
still
don't.
reaches out to me once in a while
Right.
too.
I
So
don't I don't own an arcade, but I've been to a lot, so I can be like, this works here, this doesn't work there. So
yeah.
there's some back and forth that I love.
He is big time. He is a big time student of the game. Whatever he's doing, that
Huge.
dude,
Yep.
he really invests himself in it, and he does his homework just like I did. Which is the thing that I just saw in him that I'm like, man, this guy's a lot like I am when it comes to like his passion about something. Like he's not just doing it to do it. Like he wants to make sure he knows what he's doing. So
Right. He's
yeah,
gonna do it right. He's gonna do whatever he
yeah,
needs to do that. I want to talk quick about indie games. You allowed us to demo.
hmm
Awesome spot. Had a great time. Had some people that really enjoyed the game. We were incredibly excited about the group of 40 to 50-year-old women that took the cabinet for an hour. They would not let anybody else play. That was an awesome moment. Kelly and I got to play with them. It was super funny. They wanted to
That's
take a
awesome.
picture with us like we were celebrities. That was cool. Let's just talk about what you think about the indie scene because you have a Killer Queen, you had a
Yeah,
Galactic Battleground for a little bit, which that will be coming in soon, hopefully.
hopefully.
Just give us kind of a rundown of what you know about the space and like what excites you about the arcade space, like the indie stuff.
Yeah, it's we talked about all the new games that had come out that were just Dance Dance Revolution, so they're popular, but they just don't resonate with a certain crowd. And I feel like a lot of these indie games, like they've been done right. Killer Queen. I think we're still the only one. I don't know for sure, but I think we're still the only ones in Oklahoma to have a Killer Queen. Or, we're the first ones in Oklahoma to get it, and I
I don't
remember seeing it.
I don't think I saw one at Up Down. I don't think that they had
Okay,
one.
it's just it's a new game with an old feel. So it's one of those. It has a classic or vintage feel to it, which people really appreciate. But the graphics are so much cool, are great. The game is a lot of fun to play. Killer Queen is very unique, and that was really the first indie game that I had really come across, and I was like, man, this is smart. This is combining some of the like classic games into one. You know, it has a feel of joust, essentially. It kind of has a joust feel to it, and then it has, you know, a little bit of a burger time feel to it, so there's a lot of games that I feel like I look at Killer Queen and it's like, this reminds me of this classic game, or it reminds me of that game, and it just kind of all comes together. So it's really cool. It's a lot of fun. I hadn't had a chance to play the game you guys brought by, unfortunately. But again, it it's it's uh it just feels classic, and I think that's what really for our crowd, that's what they like, and I feel like anything like that, that they're you know they're gonna eat it up. They love it, and I mean, you know, that's our demographic. You say a group of 40-year-old women came in, they wouldn't play it. I mean, that's our demographic. Those are the people who grew up in the 80s and 90s playing a lot of these games. So yeah, to them, anything that feels similar, I mean, they're game for. But it's been really cool just kind of see how the indie games have really are have carved a niche or carved their spot in arcade bars now, because of how unique they are. And um, again, it's like the people who have created them have taken their time doing their homework, and you could tell they love those classic games because they wanted that. It's that those they're the blueprints for the classic games are in the games. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we always say, I know like Tony from Deathball, Dan from DSM, we always say modern design or retro inspired with modern components. So it's like you got
Perfect.
super easy stuff to fix if anything goes wrong, but like it looks like it could still have a JAMA board in there.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really what we target is we want to be in the arcade bar space. Like that's where we want to be. It's what we design for. And speaking on the like we do our homework, we take our time on it. Since developing the game, our coder Kelly has acquired, I think he's got like 17 games in his garage now. He cleared out one side of his garage just so he could have an arcade in his garage. We've really got deep into this, and we're excited to announce our Atari license that's going to be coming out here pretty soon. But
That's awesome.
um,
Congrats.
yeah, thank you. That's really all I wanted to talk about. Just kind of like get the idea of how you got the business going and what it takes to start an arcade bar and lessons to be learned from expanding because that's always the dream, right? You want to open one and then you want to have 40 so that it's
Yeah.
it's making you money and you don't really
And
have to
it's a
do
lot
anything
of
with it.
work. It's a lot of work, though. That's the thing. And, you know, we've kind of gotten to a point with the arcade games where they've become harder to find.
Yep.
I
And more
thought,
expensive.
yeah, more expensive. I thought after COVID, I was like, oh, people are going to start selling these left and right. No, the price are like less expensive. No, the
Right.
prices skyrocketed after COVID, because
More
I think a
places have
lot.
opened up too.
Yeah, more places have opened up. I think the shortage on parts. I mean, I know that there was parts at times after COVID that it's taken us 6 months or so to get parts for certain games. So I think a lot of people started buying up some of the other games to basically take the parts out to use them, which sucks because now all of a sudden it's like now you're really limiting
Right.
how many of those specific games. But again, it's kind of a survival thing. If that's the only thing that you can do to get the parts that you need to keep the game going, and that's what a lot of people are doing. So I've seen the prices come down a little bit recently. I have not been to an auction in a while. Um, Actually, I haven't been in an auction in a long time. um, but it's you know, it is becoming a lot harder. I don't know. We've talked about it whether or not we, you know, once our oldest graduates, if we look to kind of jump back in and potentially look to expand, or if we just kind of want to do something else. It's still kind of up in the air. But you know, my biggest fear right now is just finding games. It's become incredibly hard. I think for Dallas, even when we opened up Dallas, like that was really hard getting enough games to fill that space because it's a big space.
Yeah.
Um, and I had to drive across country. I flew out to, I'm not going to say exactly where because I don't want people going to these auctions, but I flew out to a state that was, let's say 5 states away to an auction. And I drove all the way back and on the way back, I hit up. I was literally either on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist trying to hit up like different cities on the way back to see like, is anyone selling here? Is anyone selling here? Is anyone selling here? And I'll tell you, for the people who really kind of run their own businesses, especially when it comes to the arcades and you're collecting the games, some of the best memories that I've had have been collecting the games and meeting the people who have these games.
Yep.
It is because it is like it's like this connection essentially that you have when you really love these games and you learn more about them, because getting into the arcade biz, there's a lot of games that I just wasn't familiar with.
Right.
I knew the classics, I knew the basics, and then once I found something I'd never seen, then I'm like, what is this? Let me do some research. Oh my gosh, this is cool. Oh, this game led to this game. Like you start seeing which games led to what, and when you find some unique things, you're just like, that's really cool. I've never seen that. Um, and when you come across people who have some of these games that are in pristine condition, because I mean, it's like their private collection. It's like anyone who takes pride on anything that they collect, they know everything about it. They've taken great care of it. And some of the places that I have found games that I never thought that I would find games, it's just been incredible. Real quick, not to take up more time, but I came across this gentleman in a southern state when I was traveling that had I mean, he lived out in the middle of nowhere. And that's always the part that's always kind of iffy. Like I'm like, all right, is this the time that I'm not coming back from this trip? Is this the person that where I meet my end because I'm in the middle of nowhere. I have no cell phone service here. I don't even know how my maps found this, but I found this gentleman who had this. I mean, he lived out in the middle of nowhere and had probably the most incredible collection of arcade games, like classic games, like unique ones, like Zookeeper and um, Disc of Tron. I mean, he had some games that I hadn't seen. He's the one that actually got my Bubble. I don't know if you saw that we had Bubble in OKC, but he's
I
the one
did. Yeah.
I got Bubble, and I'd only seen Bubble one other time before him, and it was nowhere near as good a condition as the one that we got. So I got Bubble from him, and I've kept his information because I'm like I'm gonna come back for that Zookeeper at some point. Like I want that Zookeeper. But again, that part of it for me has been one of the coolest experiences. Is just meeting the people who have these games and just finding just a stash of games that you're just like I feel I've been around these games for 10 plus years now, so it really takes something unique for me to step in and be like, oh my gosh, like I feel like a kid now seeing some of the stuff, and it was like I could not stop just looking at all the games that he had because I'm like, I haven't seen some of these games before. I've heard of them, I have not seen them. So even I get to a point now where it's just situations like that. Like I feel like a little kid because it's just unique and it's cool. They love telling you the story about where they got it and how long they had it and why they bought it and all sorts of stuff. And those are the things at the end of the day when I'm no longer in this business. Those are the things that I'll take away. Those experiences that are just you can't put a price on that. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's like you meet someone that you didn't know, they immediately become your friends because you
Yeah,
know that you're into something the same, and it's like your inner child is speaking to their inner child, and it's like
yeah,
everything else just goes away. It's just this really crazy game that you remember playing when you were 6 and you were like, "This is
yeah,
amazing." And they're like, "I've got one. Like this is how I got it and this is how I fixed it." Like
yeah,
it's so cool to see all that emotion, and I mean, you see that in the arcade space. It's just all
yeah,
over the place, and your boots on the ground, like meeting the community. Like these are the people
yep,
that would come to your arcade. So it is a really cool experience. I totally agree. Like meeting all these owners and everything on this Texas trip was it was so cool. Like getting to actually meet everybody face to face and see the passion that they have for it and the games that they
yeah.
have collected in their space. So like that's all I have for you, man. Like just
Awesome.
give me social media so that people can follow along with your story and check out what you've done.
Yeah, so we are on Facebook and Instagram. It's FlashBack RetroPub OKC. We right now we're kind of planning out some of the rest of the events. We kind of have a couple of themed events for the year. Our next big event that we have coming up in Oklahoma City at Flashback is our '80s prom. So that'll be in April. One of our biggest events that we've ever have or that we hold on a yearly basis. The '80s prom is a lot of fun. You get to dress up. We crown a prom king and queen. It's a lot of fun. After that, we're trying to plan something for the summer. We've kind of gone back and forth. We've done a couple different things in the past. So we've done like a Miami Vice party during the summer. We've done a kind of a back to school, more of a Tom Cruise feel, and uh, then fall really just is where we kind of hit up. We do the '80s Halloween, which this year we're kind of trying to decide if we're going to go with Ghostbusters, with the new Ghostbusters movie coming out, or if we're going to do something a little bit different. I think last year we went completely different. We did Barbie Halloween, which was a lot of fun. We have the big Barbie box and everything, which is still there that people can take pictures with. We do our ugly Christmas sweater party every single year, which is a huge one, and then we do like our 1999 New Year's Eve party. But the next one coming up that we have is the '80s prom. So if you're in the area, I definitely encourage you to check it out. It's a lot of fun. You can dress up if you can find an '80s style tuxedo and dress. The better. The more '80s stuff you put on, the better. The more fun you'll have. So yeah, stop by anytime. We are open 7 days a week. We open up at 5 o'clock on weekdays, 2 p.m. on Saturdays, and all the games are free to play. We just do a 2 drink minimum, and then you can spend as much time as you want playing arcade games and just living in the '80s nostalgia that is Flashback Retro Pub.
Awesome. I love it. The idea of an '80s prom is really fun. That's pretty cool. I'm gonna throw all the links to that down in the description so you guys can check out
Perfect.
Jose's business, Flashback Retro Pub in Oklahoma City. Super fun. Games in really good condition. I just the atmosphere was great. I mean, the DJ was really good. The game selection was awesome. I loved the little like fighting game corner in the back. There were like
Yeah.
a handful of people back there all the time. But yeah, just thanks for coming on, Jose. I really appreciate your time, sharing your story, telling us what it's like to run an arcade. And for anybody else that's still watching, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us a ton. The wave will continue to grow. We have the Indie Arcade Wave shirts, the Galactic Battleground shirts, and both models of Galactic Battleground available on our website. So don't forget to check those out. And until next time, peace.